ways to talk to students this year. So I have been extremely busy trying to get teachers up to speed. And but I love taking time for these online webinars because, first of all, I'm not wearing a mask, which I've been teaching with a mask for 7 days now, and it's really not pleasant because I really love to see people's faces and when I'm training them, and it's really hard to breathe sometimes. So I'm glad to do online because I feel like you guys can actually see me, and I love that. So today we're going to be talking about Google Sites, using Google Sites for learning portfolios. Of course, this year, if we are starting remote, which some people in Alaska are, you have to try to figure out ways to do your normal job in new ways. And so we can look at how to have kids show what they know, and portfolios are a great way to do that. So let's begin. So of course, this is the slide I always present if you've been to one of my sessions in person or online. I always talk about the iceberg. This iceberg is the representation of what I do. So I'm going to talk to you guys for almost the whole hour about using sites for Google Sites for portfolios, but there are tons of things I will not have time to get to. Luckily, at the end of the presentation, I give you a bunch of clickable links, places you can go to keep learning even afterwards. The idea is that you find something that you can kind of latch onto and then take that back to your classroom or to the teachers that you work with and try to figure out some way that you can use this tool to leverage your success this year. So we're going to start by doing a Jamboard. And so if you've never gone to a Jamboard before, Jamboard is a Google core app. It's basically a space where people can collaborate easily. Think of it as a digital whiteboard. So if you're able to, and you're in the slides, if you were to go ahead and click on that link, that's going to take you to a Jamboard. Oops, make sure that I'm not in full screen when I do it. So it's going to take you to a Jamboard that looks like this. There it is. And you can see all these anonymous people joining up here at the top. That's you guys. You didn't even have to sign into anything to get to this because I have it set up that anyone with the link can edit. So when you're in here in your Jamboard, I want you to come over and grab a sticky on the left side. And when you do that, you can type a sticky note. So I want you to think about what are the benefits and the challenges that come with student portfolios. The link to the Jamboard I'll put back into the chat because I know that I got out of it really fast. So I'll do it real fast right here. I'll put it in there unless somebody else wants to, but I'll do it. Okay, there's the Jamboard. So let me go back to my Zoom. There we go. Okay, so right now I'm seeing people in there creating sticky notes. So this is a super fast, easy way if you want to be able to collaborate with children or adults. These are great in staff meetings. The beauty of Google Jamboard is that this is pretty much it. This and pictures. People can bring in sticky notes of different colors and move them around. We can organize them. And I also use Jamboards with kids where I'll have them import pictures instead of words, and we'll talk about the pictures. I often, just use this as a collaborative way to talk in class. So you can say, give your opinion, and kids can throw up their sticky notes. So as we watch everybody moving these around, sometimes when you create a sticky, you might put it on top of somebody else's. So you got to kind of move it around and all share the space. What I hope to show is that there are challenges as well as benefits to portfolios. We all know that they're beneficial, and they've not just been beneficial since we started using ed tech for a lot of things. I went to elementary school in the 80s and I had a portfolio, but it was like a folder, right? So we can see how you guys are mentioning all the things that we've talked about, that parents, students, and teachers can view them, right? So you can all see them together. We use them to save our sampled work. And I love the fact that We can use it in things like conferences, which somebody said there, and that kids can see growth. So one assignment in and of itself is not necessarily a very powerful thing, but when you put a sequence of assignments together and have the student reflect on growth, that's really a powerful way for not only student voice and choice, but student advocacy. Let's see, what else you guys have? Students can reflect back on what they learned. So I'm kind of going over the benefits you guys came up with. And then authentic assessment, of course, wonderful. So students are actually showing their learning and showing their thinking. So we're talking about metacognition too, where kids have to explain their thinking. And portfolios should be a safe place, and we'll talk about that in a second. We don't want to use portfolios as a place to do too much judgment, right? We want to give kids a good skeleton to work from, but we want them to be free to express themselves, because if they're not, then they probably won't get a very good product. So the potential challenges, and you guys have hit on a lot of these. Of course, the sharing is hard. We have to make sure we learn how to share the portfolios, not just between teacher and student, but between the teacher, student, and the outside world. And how do we control this, right? Also, what to start and what to include. I'll go through how you can plan this out, but you want to think about the age of your students. So we could be talking about 11th graders here, or we could be talking about 4th graders, just depends. And you want to plan things out a little bit differently. Time management is huge. And sometimes kids don't like to be self-reflective. It's just part of their nature. And it really is a cultural thing. Like in your classroom, kids have to feel okay with kind of judging themselves, and it's really hard. And a lot of times kids don't want to pick one thing they like the best, because they might say, well, I don't really like anything that I've done. So it is a work in progress. Portfolios don't work great the very first day. They're something that get better the longer you use them. How do you start is the big one, right? So how to, especially if I'm starting the year remotely, how do I even start having my kids make one of these? Hopefully today I'll give you some good ideas, and you can think about how you might want to start small and have kids add as they go. I really don't recommend that teachers the first day of class say, hi, here's your portfolio template. Get on there and get some stuff in there. It's really good to wait until you have maybe a good half a quarter where kids have collected things that they might be willing to put into a portfolio or create for a portfolio. And there are lots of great examples on the internet that you can actually show your students. And I think for me, that's been very successful, because the kids can see that some really good examples, and those exemplars usually will convince them to get started. But yeah, and I love the one that says getting students to be reflective about the quality of work, not everything that they've done. So we want them to be reflective on even the stuff that's maybe not their best. Some teachers think that portfolios need to just be the best of the best, but I love it when I have kids add something that they were struggling with and something that they learned how to do later. So you can put those scenarios out there and really convince them to add something interesting, because it's all about the reflection to me. You can put in something into a portfolio for me, and it isn't the thing that I'm looking at, it's the reflection that you write that goes along with it. That's where the real juice is. The challenges continue with student access, right? So we want to make sure all our kids have access. Obviously a problem when you have kids with low to no connectivity. So for right now, we're going to operate in the space where everybody has the ability to get on. But typing, of course, the way how fast they work. A portfolio really needs to be something that's very flexible and static, and it needs to be the student's own choices. And so we have to try not to put our level of what should be done when on them, because as soon as students feel that, then they really break down and they don't really want to add to it. So hopefully I will give you some good examples today. So great job on your Jamboard. If this was your first Jamboard, you're now Jamboard certified, because that's as much as there is, right? It's very simple. And to get to Jamboard, it's a core Google app. So if you can see my picture up here on the right, There you go. See, someone put a picture. Yay! I knew somebody would do that. I was waiting. And there's somebody out there. If you go to your waffle in your app launcher in Google, you'll see Jamboard there. It is just right there next to Docs. People don't know what it is. I can add more than one frame too, so we could go through and do another one together. And Jamboards are saved just like Docs slides, sheets in your Google Drive. And also, I love when kids use the laser, so I can come in here and circle something and it just goes away. Look at that one. Very nice. Okay. There you go. You learned a new tool today if you've never used Jamboard. I'm going to go back to my slides now. That is something that you can make a copy of and save, right? You can also print it as a PDF, which I use all the time. Okay, so let's go back to our session objectives. So over the next, 40 minutes, we did our portfolio brainstorm, right? We're going to talk about just an overview of what a portfolio can be and how to start the planning, right? Teachers are planners. We start planning what the year is going to look like. Even now, we have to start trying to think about that. I'm going to talk a little bit about how you can take the fact that we have remote learning now in our toolbox and what considerations I think that you should make for remote learning. Doing portfolios in a classroom might look different than it does in a remote setting, and there's just certain things I need you to think about when you're planning out your workflow. We'll talk about student voice and choice and how important that is in a portfolio and all the different ways that you can actually have your students publish their portfolios. You have choices. I always like to do a live demo in all my sessions because I can sit here and talk about sites for a long, long time and maybe you'll stay awake. But if I actually show you what things look like, then once you get into sites, you'll kind of say, oh, I've been here before because I saw her do this. And we'll have time for some questions in the chat. If you do have something that comes up, you can throw it in there. And I know my friend Chelsea will make sure that I that I answer them later. And then we'll wrap up with our survey if you want to answer it and talk about Alaska GAG. All right. So, of course, Google Sites is a core Google app. It comes with everything that you get in Google. So we're talking Docs, Slides, Sheets, Jamboard. But Sites actually has come a long way in the last 6 years. It used to be pretty clunky and not really fun to use. And only high school teachers really used it because it just wasn't pretty to look at. As Google started to kind of streamline their user interfaces, their UIs, Sites was updated about 4 years ago, and it's been really nice ever since. It was way bad. So here's the first thing we love. We love that everything's web-based, that everything's on the web. There's nothing to download. There's no folders to make. You create a site, it lives in your Google Drive, and you can do whatever you need to do to it. So web-based is great. Nobody chasing thumb drives around, right? Of course, the 21st century skills, we cannot forget about those things. These are the communication, the collaboration, the critical thinking. And you guys know what the last one is? Creativity, right? So creativity, we create, those are our 4 C's. Those are the 21st century skills. And so if you have a student make a Google site, you can pretty much have them teach themselves all of those 21st century skills because they have to figure out how to move things around and bring in different outside sources. And it really is a very, very authentic learning tool. It's easy for students to modify and organize their site. There's probably nothing worse than a tool where students can't figure out how to get something somewhere or how to move it. Everything is very intuitive, and they can make everything from a photo carousel to a button. They can create little alerts at the top of their screen. So I'll show you all those things. And even, students as young as 2nd grade can make a really nice Google site. Any student can, but I've seen some actually pretty cute little 2nd grade ones. And the secret is just starting small and giving them a little skill, a little skill here, a skill there, and just let them practice. Of course, the integration with other Google apps is premier, so that kids can add anything from their Google Drive with just a click of a button. They can also upload a file, or they can't, well, like if they had an image they found. Or they can put in a YouTube video or just a link to something else. But everything is already integrated and they can bring in a Google form, they can bring in a drawing, they can bring in so many things, and that part that makes it so easy makes kids come back for more because they feel powerful when they're able to do that and publish to the web and be able to show their skills and blow their grandparents away. Like, I made a website, wow. So pretty cool. Of course, the simple design UI we talked about. Everything's very obvious, right? And in Google, anytime you're confused, just click the 3 dots. That's my advice for the world, is if you can't do something in Google, find the 3 dots and click them, because usually the answer is right there. Of course, the portfolios can be expanded, personalized. You can give your kids somewhere to start, or maybe you don't need to if they're old enough. And kids can decide if they want to add more sections or if they are happy with what you're requiring. Either way, you have to decide how you want these things to be organized. I just saw that question pop up about how kids could do this. I would recommend a portfolio per student. I wouldn't recommend starting portfolios for math and a portfolio for English, because they should just have one platform that represents themselves. And I'll show you a couple of good examples of high school ones where kids have sections and they decide which artifacts go into each part. But for kids, one portfolio per student, that's enough. They can manage that, and there's no limit on how much they can put in there. So we should teach them how to organize that. Okay, and here's the other thing that we're kind of just touching on. This would stay with the student in the district. And so the student is the owner of the portfolio, and I'm going to show you how to make sure that happens. What you don't want to do is you don't want to create copies of the portfolio and give them out or assign them to your students or give them a link to it, because you're the owner, and that student then is just a collaborator for you. You want that student to go on and take that portfolio, take you off as a collaborator, and go make it great. So we don't want to have ourselves be the owner of portfolios. So that's one thing to watch out for. So when we plan, we want to think about our ages, right? So we can do portfolios with everybody. And what a cool idea it would be to start a portfolio in a school district in 2nd grade and have kids add to it all the way for 10 years, and what cool things that they could accomplish, and videos of themselves, when they were little, and then comparing it to when they're older. I think there's a lot of beauty in when we can make that happen. And if a student does stay in the same school district, we can make that happen. Even students that switch school districts, as long as they have a G Suite, they can actually move their portfolio from one to the other, and it makes a lot of sense because then you can keep adding to it, right? So your first steps in planning, if you are an elementary teacher and you're planning on starting portfolios with elementary, you want to come up with kind of a scripted template. I don't recommend just letting loose 4th graders, 3rd to 5th, 6th graders maybe. I work with them, and I think that there's some that are okay at portfolioing, but I think they still need just a little bit of design help. So I will often give them a template that just has a few parts and pieces, and they can add more to it. Littles, maybe 3rd graders, you want to make sure you have a pretty good template, and we're not going to just talk about changing it right now. They'll get enough out of adding all the parts and pieces. Usually in a self-contained classroom, you would approach it as, this is the student's homepage. They write a little bit about themselves, and then there's sub-pages that are each subject. That's the simplest way to do it. And then I do a lot of guided stuff. Of course, I do this in person a lot. So I'm going to be making a lot of screencasted videos of how to help kids make portfolios. And that's how we're going to be teaching our students if we're not in a meet with them. And I think it's even harder to teach in a meet. I think I'd rather be able to screencast, because if I mess up, I can start over. But there's going to be a lot of walking through, this step at a time, open up your template. And we'll talk about the copies in a minute. But, everything's a very slow pace at the elementary level, and you want it to be, because it's a lot to take in and you want to just start very small. So it might take you a week just to get everybody's portfolio. Yeah, so the next thing is for middle school. So for middle school, when I do portfolios with middle schoolers, I use a template, but it's very not strict, right? I give them something to start with, and then I show them how to add more things. So with elementary, I might not go off on, hey, you can add this and this. Some of them will figure it out, but I don't usually make that a topic. I just let that happen organically. But with middle schoolers, I show them how to add more things, and we play around with adding more things and what it looks like. And then I'll just give them directions. So I want you to open a template, my template. I want you to make a copy. I want you to share it with me. They're good at just getting directions and going through, as long as they're numbered. They're good at numbered directions. And then give them some flexibility. So don't say, you may only have 3 sections, and that's, we want them to be able to feel okay with adding more things, because they're giving of themselves, right? They're talking about themselves, and we want them to feel free to do that. In high school, I don't think that you really have to provide a template if the kids are just starting a new portfolio. I think that it's intuitive enough, and I think that high schoolers should have the agency to decide how they want things to look and be organized. Even seniors in high school, they were born in 2002. I know because I have one in my house, and they don't need our help with making things on any kind of computer. They are very good at it. They are very good at thinking about the way things should be set up. And so I think high schoolers deserve that freedom. You can just give them objectives. So I want you, somewhere in your portfolio, I'd like to see a self-reflection or a goal for, your career. And then somewhere in your portfolio, I'd like to see something where, math related. And so they can decide how they want that to be organized. And then if they do have a career in mind, you can have them create a section that's career-based, either like a dream board kind of thing, or a lot of high school teachers will use portfolios as a way to search for information for what they're going to do after. So if they're going to go into a vocation, they might, auto repair, they might find different schools and what do you want to say? Resources. Sorry, had like a blank. Resources of how to do that job, or colleges. If they're searching for colleges, they could go out and find resources, and that could be their one little clearinghouse. And then when you talk about doing conferences with parents, it becomes very easy because you have this one thing to start from, and of course the possibilities are endless. All right, so here's what we have to think about for remote learning. So I had to add this because this, I talk so much when I do this workshop in person. We practice like what we're going to do with our students, and we just don't have that this time around, not in any way, shape, or form. So when you're doing portfolios, figure out how you're going to be meeting with your students. So in our district, we're using Google Meet. And this is a great time for students to practice screen sharing. So you're in a Google Meet with a student, and you could even do this maybe as a small group if the kids are comfortable, if you're at that place, and they can screen share their portfolio. Of course, you're both collaborators, so you could both be in there at the same time, but it's not the same thing. I like to have the child sit and explain to me some of the things that they've added to their portfolios. So that works. And then I would consider too, if you start portfolios, let your kids know that you're not going to be publishing, or you don't really need them to publish it until later, because let's give it time to kind of grow a little bit, and then maybe publishing can be something at Christmas break we all publish. And you can also choose how far and wide your audience goes, and we'll talk about that in a bit. Provide easy ways for kids to submit and show their learning. So we're not just talking about get on and put something there, but a lot of students, a lot of teachers will put things into the template so that they can show their learning. Like I used to put a Google form in my template, and so students could fill out the form, and then it turned into a reflection, and all the student reflections were together. Stay with me here. And then they could link to all the responses and see what everybody else said. So think about ways that students can share in different ways, not just writing. They can also make videos, right? Which are pretty easy to make nowadays. So encourage your kids not just to show writing, but to show graphic design, speaking, anything they can, anything they can video themselves doing, or create and show. I have done one where I have kids screencast on their own Chromebook, and they put their little face at the bottom, and they walk students through their portfolio. And I share that with students the next year. So we're going to watch a video of so-and-so, and this was when I taught 6th grade, so then they were already gone. I didn't have to worry about them seeing each other in the hallway. This is, Amy's going to share with you guys what she did for her portfolio last year. So for me, it was a culminating activity, but I also killed 2 birds with 1 stone, because then I could use those videos as my exemplars for next year. And kids would say, oh, I know her. I saw her in the hallway. That's her portfolio. Of course, I never make kids. I don't never say you have to share your portfolio, but I gave it as an option at the end of the year that as part of their end of the year project, they could share a screencast of their portfolio. And you choose, either you and the student are the only persons who can see it. You can have it just available to anyone in your school district, or you can go all the way to the world wide web. You guys got to choose how you want it to be published. I usually don't have students I don't give students rubrics and have them give each other feedback on portfolios. I always want to keep portfolios super safe, and I want to encourage kids to add things, but I don't want to say, man, I really think that you've added way too many videos, because that just shuts things down, right? So I try to make sure I'm not putting 2 kids together and saying, go give each other feedback on your portfolios, because I really feel like it's not a place that I want them to go. I'd rather them feel like it's something between the student and I. Of course, they're willing to, if they want feedback from other people. Some kids are real extroverted and like to show off all the things they've done on their site, and I want them to do that, but I don't ever make kids sit down and give each other feedback. So here's student voice and choice. Number one is the student owns the portfolio, not you. You are an advisor, you're a facilitator, you're an advice giver, but the student has to own it. And I'm talking about misspelled words, things that don't make sense. The student has to be the one that owns it, because if you own it, then the student is not going to be as engaged, and it's not going to be as individual, right? We want it to be their own work. Templates, obviously, are starting points. You're always going to get students that will not change one thing from the template. They will leave it like the font. I mean, I've had a kid turn in a portfolio and I put a placeholder where you would put your picture, and the kid just left the other little girl's picture, the one stock image. I was like, no, actually you have to put your own picture in there. So some kids are really rigid. They don't want to break that template and they don't want to add new things, and that's okay, right? But some kids will go way overboard, but that's why we love them, right? They're individuals, and so their templates are starting points. Give them a way to propose a new section. So with 5th graders one year, I said, if you would like to add a section to your portfolio, I gave them a form, and I said, you need to tell me what section you'd like to add and why you think it's important to add to your portfolio. And it was amazing. I got, I want to add a page that's just about my pets, or my dad and I went moose hunting and I really want to talk about moose, and I want to show my pictures and how we dress them. I mean, so they had to explain why it was so important. I never said no, but just having them explain that and put that into words was so cool. And I just kind of thought of that one year as, hey, why not? And it worked out really well. A lot of older students will do passion projects, something they're super passionate about, and maybe a long-term goal. They might start a section on what their passion project is. Screencasting, of course, is an incredible skill. Teachers need to know how to do it now because remote learning makes it important. But students should know how to screencast, and they can do it. They don't need much coaching. But I personally use Screencastify. You can also use Screencast-O-Matic. A lot of teachers are starting to use Loom, L-O-O-M. And those are the 3 kind of the biggest screencasting tools right now. And then you can also screencast on Flipgrid now. I don't know if you're a Flipgrid user. You can screencast on Flipgrid as well and make little videos. And then never forget that even if things are messy and they don't look great, that is learning, right? Skills sometimes aren't pretty. And so no matter what, if you're teaching a student how to embed a picture in a website and put a caption under it, that's a great skill. And they also have to kind of think about the way their website flows. They can keep certain pages private so no one can see them. They're hidden from navigation. And they can choose how they organize their pages and their sub pages. So it's really nice that those skills are super important, and I think it helps them that we have this one tool that kind of encapsulates them all. And then praise, praise, praise. Of course, we all know positive energy, positive comments. You worked really hard on that. You'll get kids more engaged, and they'll want to add because of that positive feedback that you're giving them. When you publish a Google site, so you have some choices. Now, of course, when students start a new site, they're either going to start one from scratch or they're going to copy a template of yours. And so the way that they copy a template is I give them the link to the template, and then I show them how to duplicate my site. So I'll actually physically show them in class, or I actually make a video. Bigger kids, you don't need to do this. Bigger kids, you can say, start a new Google site and go for it, right? But little kids need a little more help, so we teach them to duplicate the site. As soon as they make that duplication, they own the new copy. So that's their portfolio. And then they have to add you, the teacher, as a collaborator. So you become their collaborator, but they own the portfolio because they own that, figuratively, right? So it's their, if you look inside their Google Drive and it says who is the owner, it's the child's name. You want it to be the child's name, not you. That's the whole idea. So students can choose to publish to nobody. They can just publish to you and them, and you can go look at the website together and be happy. We can publish it to our school district, or we can publish it to the world. And if you teach digital citizenship and you do any kind of lessons, whether through Google's Be Internet Awesome or Common Sense Media has awesome lessons, this is a tool that you can use when you talk about privacy, you talk about how you want to be safe online. You can use their Google site as a way to personify all those things that you're talking about in digital citizenship class. So the kids will copy your site. Now, people always ask, hey, why can't I assign a template on Google Classroom? Well, wouldn't that be fun, right? So we could just share it and say, make a copy for each student. It doesn't work that way because the way Classroom works is just a shifting of permissions. And there's also a difference between a draft and a published site. I've heard a couple times, oh, they're thinking about adding the ability to assign a copy, template for a copy. It hasn't come to fruition, but I do know that it is in the pipeline. So trainers, every quarter we get a little webcast that's highly confidential because we all sign this crazy NDA, and it's been in the pipeline for the last 3 meetings. So I know it's coming at some point in time. Some things just take a little bit longer. But for now, this works like a charm. The kids learn how to duplicate a site, and they are the owner. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at a live demo. What's going to happen when I click here is going to take me to sites, and I'm actually in the template menu. So Sites does have templates, and this is what you see when you first go to Google Sites. It just shows you this template gallery, and I got there by going to sites.google.com. Sites.google.com, it takes me to here where it's loading all my old sites, and I have some templates that I can actually choose from. The one that's labeled Student Portfolio is actually not a bad one. I actually like it, and it's good for elementary. If you're going to do a portfolio for older students, this one with kind of an older portfolio, I like the way it's pretty clean, right? So, and students would like it. Of course, anything on here is changeable, right? They can change anything in a template, but it gives them a place to start, right? So what I'm going to do is open up a brand new student portfolio, and we'll look at what the pieces of the template are, and then we'll look at all the things that students could add or you could add to your template. So you'll see this banner pop up of this student. This is what I was talking about. This one student left the stock picture of the other kid up there. And I was like, So kids can change this to be, them, in Hawaii or whatever. And they could also change their header. So some kids hate this big header, so they'll change it to something that's like a little smaller. They like that. I I also teach them that they want to make a cover page. A lot of kids love to make a cover page, which is just one big picture with some words on it. And then the person can click around in their menu. Now up here at the top, you'll see that this says your name. That's there because students actually do put their name there. I actually have them put Amy's portfolio. And then they can make this look different. It can be named the same thing or different. But you'll see it's easy for kids to come in and change what things look like. They can link out to anything. They can, I like Learning Journey too, actually. They can change different kinds of headings, subheadings, things like that. When you're working inside of these banners, you're a little bit restricted because the banners are certain sizes and only certain fonts look really good. But when you come down into different parts of the website, you have a little more functionality. Now, the one thing that drives kids crazy is they don't get all their Google fonts because it just doesn't translate well, right? So you'll get kids that love to write in cursive, right, when they turn in things, and they're not really able to do that. They can choose different sizes of text, but they're not able to do a lot of styling because we try to keep, Google Sites is a really, really simplified version. So if you use Wix or you use Weebly to make websites, you're kind of used to that, where there's kind of a rigid standard. And I think that you'll find that kids don't really miss it. They don't really ever talk about, oh, I can't change the fonts, because there's so many other things that they can change. So the student has made this copy. They've added me as a collaborator. So let me show you how that happens. First of all, in order for them to make the copy, they would open up my template and they would go to these, what do you think? 3 dots, right? 3 dots at the top of the screen. And they would put duplicate site. And when they do, that little window pops up and I have them change the name and I have them duplicate it. When they get to the new site, which is the one we opened up, right? They go up to this plus and they add me as a collaborator. So in one day, I have 24 new portfolios that have been shared with me in my Google Drive. So I've taught them to add in my F number in the school district, and they click done. And right now, it says that the draft is restricted. Only certain people can open it. So that means anybody that's in my collaborator at the top, let me do that again, sorry, can open up my draft. It shows up in my drive as shared with me, just like a document would. And then you can also change here where people can see it when it's published. Okay, so it's important for kids to know what the difference is between draft and published. Draft is what we're working on. It's also what it looks like when we've made changes. If you ever made a website, you remember you can make all the changes you want, but nothing's live until you publish. So the draft is the current version, published or not. The published site is what's on the internet. And so for right now, what I have my kids do is just restrict the publishing so we can practice publishing, but we're the only 2 that can actually see it. So that's just something to practice. But it works really well. And then we can decide if we want to publish it to the school district, and you'll choose the back end of your URL, or you can make it public. And of course, you have to decide, according to your own school district's rules, what things students can publish to the internet and what things that parents have to agree to as part of their parent permissions. And that's different everywhere. So most G Suite admins in the school district will be very happy to tell you multiple times about what you can and can't do as far as publishing and what parental permissions you need. And I'm of the thought that kids should publish to the world and then think about what they're posting to make sure that it stays within something that makes it still safe for them, right? Not identifying information. But there's sometimes where you just want it to have in the school district, and that's fine as well. If you really wanted to get restricted, you could just put the emails of the Google logins of the people that you want to be able to see the website, and that works too. So you can decide how many people you want to view it. Okay, so we added our collaborators. By the way, this is our publish button. I have not published yet, but I'm going to so I can show it to you. But if we go through the things that you can add, we have 3 main menus. We have insert. This is where you're going to put stuff into your site. You can choose, obviously, a text box. Dropbox, Images, Drive, or embed. So if you want to embed a video, embed a Twitter feed, you can embed anything, and it'll just make a new code box for you. There are tons of layouts. Well, I guess tons. There used to be only one. So for me, it's tons. But you can choose different layouts. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new page. By the way, the template that this comes in starts with a home. That's your home page, right? The very front of the website. And then in here, we have some pages and sub-pages. You're probably asking where those are. They're actually over here in the menu. I can make this menu to be on the side, or in my settings, I can choose to put this on the top. Some kids like to have their little things on the top just so people can do drop downs, which are really cute. But that's this right here is what you see in this hierarchy. And you can move pages around. So if I wanted activities to be inside of classes, I could just move it there. Or if I wanted to take it out, I could take it out. Okay. In here, you can, your three dots, you can make a different page your home page. You could copy it. You could add a subpage to it, or you can also hide it from navigation. So sometimes kids will have a page they're working on. They'll hide it from navigation. It'll show up with a cross through it. That means even if it's published to the internet, nobody can see it. And yes, if you're a collaborator, you can add anything to the student's portfolio. So you could go through and add pages for them that you wanted them to use, like for middle of the year or something. As a collaborator, you can do everything that the document site owner can do. All right, so those are your pages. If you want to create a new page, you would come down here to New Page, and you can create any kind of subpage that you want, and it works out really great. All right, so pages can be dragged around and collapsed, and there they are. It's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to go back to, oh, I just went into one, by the way. So I went into classes, and one of the things I like to do is put placeholders into pages so that kids can know that I want something to go there. So down here in your menu of things that you can add, these are all the things you can add to a site. I put a placeholder into a site. I can drag it around to where I want it to go. Of course, kids can do this. When items are being drug around, you'll start to see lines, and that helps you line up things. It'll automatically snap to a certain grid, and you can move things up and down depending on what you want, where you want them to go. But I can put a placeholder there, and then I could only accept a certain kind of file type. So this is one of the things I love. So if I say, please attach a Google map of the place you went, whatever, for your field trip, then I can say that I only want Google Maps to be in this placeholder. So if they try to post a selfie or they try to post a doc, it won't work. They have to post that kind of file, and they'll know by the icon right here. So all they have to do is click, find the image from Google Maps, and plop it right in. The placeholders are great for elementary because then it's part of your template, right? I want a form to go here, I want a slide to go here, and you can have the kids put the things where you want them to go. You can say down here, right here needs to be a doc, right here needs to be an image, right here needs to be slides. So you can get kind of creative with that. Let's see, there is a, let's see, I want to make sure I get the, oh yeah. So this is one of my kids' favorite things. It's called an announcement banner, and it's up at the top of your site. And I got to there from this cog where you find all your settings, and the kids can put any message that they want, and they can show it or turn it off, and they can choose the banner color. So they can say, like, my birthday is Saturday. Okay, yay. And then they can save it. And once they publish it, it'll look like that. So when people go to their website, they can have an announcement banner, which it's such a popular thing. And I understand why, because they can just kind of shout something to everybody, or you can come in here and they can turn it off and on as needed. Let's see. So collapsible text, that's text that when it's hovered over, expands. I'm going to run through these real quick so we don't run out of time. A table of contents they can add, which is great for a portfolio too, because they can show all the things that are in a certain area. Image carousels are awesome for kids taking pictures of their work, and the image carousel will be there and the person can flip through it with their mouse. Of course, all kids love buttons. They will add buttons everywhere, and we want them to be able to create. So they can add a button with any title, and it can have any link underneath it. Regular dividers are there, placeholders. And then here's where they can add the different things that you can add the different things, or they can. YouTube videos, their Google Calendar if they want to share that, and then anything from their Drive. When we go into Drive, if I were to push this, this is now the student's Drive. So it's going to show them the things in their Drive so that they can go in and select something. So they can do it that way, and they can also go through Shared with Me or Recent, the same way that you would navigate your own Drive. All right. We went through pages, and then there are certain themes that Google Sites allows. Certainly not enough if you ask children, but it's very strict, right? So they can choose any one of these styles if they don't like the template style, and they can change the prevailing colors in the site itself. So I think it's enough. Kids don't think it's enough, but I just encourage them to bring in different graphics and make it their own. Okay, let's talk about publishing. Let's say I'm going to publish my site. I have to tell it what I want the back end of the URL to be. So I usually have my students just put their name and an S, so Amy's portfolio. You can decide what you want it to be. It doesn't matter to me. You can have your name on it, but I feel like this student, I'm hoping, is going to take this on past me. They're going to take me off as a collaborator and put another teacher on, because I think that's the best practice. And so I like the fact that I can just have them name it anything, and it can just live with them. This says who can view my site. So this is important, right? So I teach kids to select. This is that same thing that we saw earlier. I'm the collaborator. And then once we publish, we get that URL, and you'll be able, I'll show you exactly where to find it. So right now I have it so only the collaborators can open the draft, and only the collaborators can see the link on the internet. But if I wanted to open it up to the school district or to the world and only share it with people that I choose, then we can add that and change it. And it can be changed anytime. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. It takes just a moment, and then I'll show you. And yes, you can add subpages with links. You can have all your students' portfolio in one place if that's the way you choose. This website can be used just like any other URL. So you'll see now up in the publish button, I have a little triangle. So if I click that down, I can go into my publishing settings. This is a new setting. It'll show you just the changes you've made since the last time you published, which is really nice because sometimes I'll make changes to a site and I'll forget what I did. That's pretty cool. Then here's your published site. So this opens up a brand new tab. I don't know if you saw that. It opened up a brand new tab up here. Now here is my site. I can go back to the front. There's Amy's portfolio. And this is published to the internet just like everything else is. But right now, my student and I are the only ones. If I shared this link with my mom, she would not be able to see it, right? Because she's not in that list. So your publishing audience can be as tiny or as wide as you want. And your portfolio links can be embedded anywhere. So on Google Classroom, on a website. You have to decide how that works for you and what age of kids you're talking about, of course. So I'm going to close her site again. I want to show you an example of a wonderful portfolio that's for high school. This is actually for a physics course, but this instructor actually let his kids take it further and add more subjects. But this is a girl named Natalie. She added in some slide presentations she did. She made a marble coaster. And then she also has pages for her different passions that she loves, you know, singing in musicals and makeup and fashion. And she added in videos, pictures. But then this was also her physics teacher convinced her to make this as part of his class, but he also let kids add more subjects, which I love. So she still gets to talk about momentum and energy and light, but she also has pages about singing and dancing. I think it's just great. So this is where the kids took all their labs and posted them for everyone to see, all their videos. And then they have reflections. So I have a good understanding. I'm not good at explanations. She's reflecting on this. This link is in the slides if you want to go through and look at Natalie's portfolio a little bit more. Okay, so last thing, the last slide is resources. So these are all the resources that I think are the best when you're learning about Google Sites. And the last link is actually a podcast from a podcast called Google Teacher Tribe. And so you can get into the slide deck, save those PDFs, and these links will work forever. And you can get in, and the third one is Google Sites Help Center. So if you want to just learn about one specific thing in Google Sites, that's a good link to go to. And we have questions. Let's do. We have any like burning questions, Chelsea? I haven't even looked at the chat.
So the only question that I see that hasn't been answered maybe was from Matthew. He said, "How much HTML can you use this to teach?"
Well, yeah, you're not teaching any kind of language, right? You're not teaching any kind of coding language with this. Unfortunately, there's lots of other cool tools for that. It's supposed to be kind of approachable, with the exception of the embed code, where the kids see what the code looks like and put it in. That's really the only time they're going to see anything even remotely related to that. It's all behind the curtain. Anything else?
Yeah, I don't think there's any more in the chat, but if you have a question, feel free to take over the mic or post it in the chat and we'll get it answered.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'll kick it back to you, Chelsea.
All right. So thank you so much for attending. If you still have a question, feel free to post it in the chat and we'll get back to it. But we would love your feedback as a new group. We really want to make a lasting impact and continue this in the future. So if you wouldn't mind clicking on that link and giving us feedback about this session, but then other things that you'd like to see in the future. I know a lot of us are going to be in some sort of virtual environment using Google this upcoming fall, which may not be something that we're used to. So we really want to direct GEG Alaska to be a helpful place where you guys can get resources that are relevant to what you're doing. So please fill out that feedback form. And if you can go to the next slide, Allison. You can sign up for our Google group as well. So the Google group is a place where you guys can ask questions asynchronously. So it's just a place where all Alaskan educators can go, connect, ask questions. We do a member brag board where if you're doing something really awesome with Google tools, you can share it with us. Like, for example, congratulations, Tana, for getting her Google certified level 1 certificate, which is awesome. So we'd love to hear just all of the awesome things that you're doing. Feel free to brag or share the awesome resources that you have, or also just ask questions. So it's a quick board to where, hey, I don't know why the share setting isn't working, or what are you doing with Google Docs? Whatever it may be, just a place to ask and get information directly back from other Alaskan educators. So you can visit our website for more information and details how to join. And then the next slide, please. So GEG Alaska just started as an idea at the beginning of the summer, and we've been hosting just professional development every week since then. But now we are going to officially launch and become an official organization within the state of Alaska, and we would like to invite you to our launch party, which will be on September 22nd. It'll be an in-depth dive of how to use the Google group and then just different things about different other professional development opportunities that we'll be offering. So again, you can visit our website for more information. And I think there's one or two more slides. Yep. Okay. So also being a new group, we are looking for people to help. This summer, it was nice, because we were all on summer break or had a little bit of a flexible schedule, so we could do a lot with GEG Alaska. But as school gears up, we'll all be very busy. So many hands make a lighter load. It is not paid. We are all just volunteers who love sharing, love Google, and love connecting with others. So if you would like to join our leadership team with helping with putting on presentations or managing the chat or making designs, whatever you think you'd like to do, we would really appreciate it. And you can email us at gegalaska@gmail.com. I think there's one more slide. Yeah, so these are just ways to connect with us. So you can visit our website, join our Google group, email us, and then we are also on Twitter at gegalaska.com. It looks like, Allison, before we close, we do have a few questions that came through. So Susan asks, she said she has a question on font for a barred I for Indigenous language. Susan, if you wouldn't mind posting that question again, or if that was just the general question. but then there's several more.
Well, I think I saw that a question for a font. Oh, Bard I. So is that if that you can use all the different keyboards that you use in normal on your computer, right? So I saw fonts restricted Bard L. Oh, Bard L. Yeah, so you have to have, if the character is available on an international keyboard and you can change that in your computer setting, then you should be able to use it on Google Slides, because Google Slides, it works with all the same keyboards. So people that use umlauts and things like that, they can all make use the same fonts as far as their characters. So you shouldn't have any issue as long as you can find the character on an international keyboard and then switch to that one on your computer. What else? I saw one about making a video and having kids show it. That is super important. I would recommend that don't find a video on YouTube, make it. Get your screencaster fired up and show your kids with your face and your voice, because we're not in the same room. And as much as you can get your face, your voice, your body, and as many things as you can do and let kids watch you do your thing, you'll get a lot more leverage out of that video, because it's not some stranger that they don't know, that you're the one showing them. And I think you'll find that kids will be more engaged if you approach it that way.
But then kind of a caveat off that, if you're like, okay, I want to make a video, but I have nowhere to start, maybe Allison has an awesome screencast that she'd post to our Google group that you guys can use as a model to make your own. And then once
that's a good idea.
You can post it as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I can definitely make a little screencast for the group for sure. That's a good idea. I'll do that. All right, cool. Are we cool?
And one last question. I think there were some questions about permissions. Okay. I'm assuming that since the kids have permission to publish or not publish to the world, what if the kid wants to publish to the world, but the parents don't? I'm assuming you as a parent, you as a teacher can go in and turn off the publish to the world. Yes?
Yes, of course. You have all the same permissions as a student. Yeah. So, sometimes people will say, well, what if a kid puts something on there and publishes it? And so I think that's part of your digital citizenship culture, is that you have to start small. And, we talk about that, about, respecting rules and, not sharing your password and how to make a good password, and publishing to the internet. So, if you don't have kids ever publish, this still works, because you can still see the draft, you and that student, and it still has value. So maybe they work on it in 3rd grade, but they don't actually publish it until 4th grade. That would work too. So you can take whatever you're working with, whatever kinds of students you're working with, and do as limited a portfolio or as widely published a portfolio as that works for your situation. But that's a good question.
And then Allison, last question for Matthew. Do they have to share it with the teacher first?
Do you have to what?
Share it with the teacher first.
Right. So they are adding you as a collaborator when they make the copy. So that you're basically sharing, right? You're now both collaborating, just like in forms, when you add a collaborator, you're sharing that form. They make the copy and they add me as a collaborator, and then we both have the same permissions on the site 100%. Not one person has more permissions than the other.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Allison, for the awesome presentation. This presentation was recorded, so if you want to watch it again or see previous presentations, you can check out our YouTube channel, which is linked on our website. Otherwise, we hope everyone has a great night, and thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody.